back in about 1995, I started thinking about making a hiking boot, which would also be suitable for going higher up in the Lakeland Fells or the Cairngorms. Back in those days, mountain boots were out-and-out mountain boots, and hiking boots were always softer. So I was trying to make a combination of the two. I think most people only own one pair of boots, and generally speaking it'll be a hiking boot because people tend to do more low-level walking, day hikes, weekend hikes, but every now and then you fancy a challenge and you want to go up on the top of a mountain, and that was pretty much the way I was myself. This is the tetherer. This is a men's version. So the upper is a thicker leather, more towards a mountain boot leather. It's 2.4, 2.6 millimeters, whereas a hiking boot, generally in a leather hiking boot, it would be 2.0, 2.2. It makes quite a difference. The main thing about the design is that, I don't know how well you can see it, but the tongue folds over on itself. Do you see that? It's one piece of leather all the way around, and the tongue folds in. There's not a separate tongue stitched in. And that means there are no stitch holes anywhere in this area where the boot is flexing. That's very important for waterproofing, and it's also a, how can I put it? It's an old traditional type of design. This type of design was known as the Nordic Design because back in the 20s and 30s, this classic design was what they used in all of the old alpine boots. That's where you'd see it. And those boots, I don't know if you've ever worn the old, I mean, I had a pair, and I have to say that they were like, it was like strapping a plank on your foot. It was so stiff. It just had zero flex, no matter what you do. It had great steel segs all down the sides of here, and it was one piece. And you could lash grease and wax all over them, melt candle wax on them, do what you want to waterproof them, but they never flexed. So once it was there, it was set forever. It was like a sculpture. So this was the old Nordic design. Terrific design, and actually not the easiest of, from a boot making point of view, not the easiest one to make. But it was, but by the time we came into the 60s, the componentry that was available to bootmakers was getting better. Lots of things were getting better, and so we were able to start making mountain boots or high-level boots for with a little bit of flex in, so that they became more comfortable. The other thing I did with the tether for comfort, of course, is around the Achilles area at the back here. Now, if I show you this is another boot we make. This is called the Malastang. Now, this is a boot for mountain trekking. Really, it is quite stiff, and it doesn't have the flex. See, the leather comes higher up, and look at the sole. So this is for mountain trekking. So the compromise I made in order to make this a combination of hiking and mountain trekking was certainly around here. Once you get that movement, it means that you can walk in a more natural way, a natural walking gait. With these boots on, you walk a bit like Robocop. But with it flexing at the back, you can walk more naturally. And that's what you want in a hiking boot. You don't want to be have your ankle fixed so hard there's no movement. So this gives you a little bit of backwards and forwards movement as you're walking. The other thing is the sole. And this micro layer, and I can show you here, these are the soles. This micro layer is really absorbent for shock absorbing. The weight of it is light because the micro weighs very little, and it's got a good tread. So it's everything you need in a hiking boot, but you know what? That's not a bad tread for when you get higher up in the hills as well. This is an out and out. Look at the sharp edges on this, and the depth of the cleats and the heel thing. And look, it's got rubber thing on the back, so it's better for taking an articulated crampon. But you can do a strap-on crampon with the tetherer because it goes around there and it fastens on. But this is what you expect to find on a boot designed for the mountains. So, and finally, this is a new sole I'm just introducing now. I've been developing it for years, and it's called the high traction sole. And it's called the high traction sole because it has a higher level of traction. That's what that's all about. But it's not a bad self-cleaning sole, and it has a lot more going for it than some soles. The leather, the slip resistance is much better. So that's why I'm changing over to this sole at the moment on a lot of the boots I'm making. Now, inside the boot. Inside, I use a Sympatex lining. Now, if I go back 20 years ago, I had to take a decision on which lining to use in the Altberg boots, and so I did a little bit of research, and I did a little bit of research, and I have to say, I was surprised by the most popular waterproof lining. There was quite a lot out there about the fact that it wasn't too environmentally friendly. People don't understand linings. Let me show you something. This is the Sympatex that we use. Now, do you see that there? Do you see how thin it is? You can almost see your hand through it. This bit here, this layer, that's the membrane. And that membrane on Sympatex, it's a polyamide membrane. And this membrane, it uses recycled textiles on the inside. Polyamide, it's all biodegradable, and it's all stuff that really, it doesn't pollute. So this is Sympatex, and as you can see, it has a layer of recycled textile on the top, which does a great job. It has a little bit of felt in the middle, which you do need, and then it has the membrane, and then there's like what we call a scrim over the membrane to protect the membrane. And when you see it through a magnifying thing, you can actually see it's there like that. So for that reason, I went the tetherer boot and the Malastang, come to that, they have inside, they have Sympatex. And finally, with the tetherer boot, I made it in 5 width fittings. I already made other boots in 5 width fittings, but I thought the tetherer is a boot that should be in 5 width fittings. The Malastang's in 5 width fittings. My reason behind that is, these types of boots, leather boots, they're made in quite strong leathers. And so, if the boot doesn't fit, if the boot only fits 50% right, then your foot will have difficulty altering the boot to make it comfortable. But if the boot can fit 90% okay, you get your foot measured, get your width measured, try on a medium, try on a wide, try on a narrow, try on a half size. Arrive at the one you think, yeah, that's probably my best fit. And it's always the customer's decision which is the best fit. I mean, I can only decide what a good fit is for my feet. I can't decide for anybody else. I haven't got the boots on my feet. But if it's 90% there, no question, your feet will sort it out. More room for your little toe, more room here. The whole thing, it'll begin to adapt to your foot. But if you say 75%, I'm not so sure. My experience is your foot won't change the boot and your boots won't be comfortable. More importantly, if a boot doesn't fit well, you don't get the same support. A good fitting boot gives good support. A boot not fitting well, if it's too big, for example, you don't get the support. So on these types of boots, which use leathers, I went on to 5 width fittings. And last but not least, the name. Well, as I've said earlier, this was my third attempt at making a boot which would sort of be an in-between boot for hiking and for mountains. It's not a perfect mountain boot. It's a good, strong hiking boot. But this is my third attempt. And up in Swaledale, which is not so far from here, in fact, I was walking up there last night, And my wife's family are all from Swaledale, and her father was a farmer. I spent time on the hills with him and gathering sheep. And when he counted sheep, even then, when he was at home, he wasn't allowed to use dialect. His wife used to tell him off if he dropped into dialect. But once them farmers got up on the hills, they all dropped back into dialect. I couldn't understand them half the time. But when they counted, they still used the old language for counting. And he would count the sheep, yan, tan, tethera, methera, pip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so, because it was the third boot, I decided to call it tethera. And it would be yan, tan, tethera.